Good evening, Shalom. Thank you on behalf of the family, for joining us to commemorate the first yahrzeit of the passing of our beloved Dr. Aviva Roxanne Schnur Goldblatt. Please mute yourselves. We will begin the Azkara with the recitation of Tehillim chapter 23, Kaf Gimel, by Talia. Talia, please.
מזמור לדוד. אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בנאות דשא ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינעלני. נפשי ישובב ינחני במעגלי צדק, למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגצר מוות לא ירא, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. בני שמך נגד צורריי. תישנת בשמן ראשי כסיר רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני חיי ושבתי בבית אדוני.
Aviva Zichrona Livracha told me a short while before her passing that she felt great comfort knowing that she would live on in each one of her daughters, in each in a different way. I know Sila and Nili less than I know Talia and Livia, but I'm sure that it is as true of Sila and Nili as it is of Talia and Livia, that Aviva Zichrona Livracha, their beloved mother, lives on in them. As we see these extraordinary, talented young women, we know we see Aviva in each of them. Tonight, we're going to commemorate the first yahrzeit with 3 shiurim le'ilui neshama, 15 minutes each, followed by reminiscences by Dr. Raphael Guggenheim. We will begin with Daphne Siegman. All of Aviva's teachers at Nishmat speak not of teaching Aviva. Oh no, we all speak of the privilege of learning with Aviva. Daphne, please teach us Le'ilui Neshama of Aviva Zichrona Livracha.
Thank you, Rabbanit Henkin, and thank you to the family and to Nishmat for asking me to share some learning and memories of Aviva. I might be a little shorter than 15 minutes. I apologize that I have another class meeting at 8:30, so I'll be on time. I'll start with some learning and then I'll share connected to some reminiscences about Aviva. Wanted to highlight something that struck me this year connected to Parashat Shlach, which we're reading this Shabbat here in Israel. Those of you in America have an extra week. About Chet HaMeraglim. I wanted to focus on the name. We call it Chet HaMeraglim. Please mute if you're not muted. We call it the sin of the spies, and the word we use in Hebrew is the meraglim. And truthfully, as many people know, that's not a word that appears neither in the first telling of the story as it takes place in Parashat Shlach in the book of Numbers, and it's not a word that's used when Moshe later in Deuteronomy and Devarim retells the story as well. In each of those chapters, we have different verbs that are used for checking out, exploring the land. And yet the word that's chosen is the word miraglim, which is a word that's used later in the Tanakh, in Yehoshua and in Shmuel and the books of Joshua and Samuel, for actual military spies and, call it, more political and military operations. And it struck me, I was trying to think why the label that we give this story of the group of 12 who go to check out the land, and they go with specific questions to come back and report. And it's a colossal failure, and it costs the Jewish people 40 years in the desert because only 2 give a report that's positive and conveys faith in God's ability to help the Jewish people settle the land. And the other 10 give a slightly editorialized version of what they found and draw the immediate conclusion that what we found means it's mission impossible, and they create a certain hysteria among the people, and everybody begins to weep and cry and panic, and that's the beginning of the next 40 years of the desert experience. But I wanted to try to understand, why would we pin the label of the miraglim, the word for spies that doesn't appear in the story, on the story? And I made a connection with the first time in the Torah, the only previous time, that we meet the word meraglim, spies. And it's an interesting setting. We meet it at the end of Sefer Breshit, at the end of the book of Genesis, when the brothers of the sons of Yaakov, the sons of Jacob, are out of food. There's a famine in the land of Israel, and they go down to Egypt, and they meet the viceroy of Egypt, who they don't know is the brother that they sold into slavery, Yosef. And the story tells us in chapter 42 of Sefer Bereshit that when they come down to Egypt, immediately Yosef starts to speak harshly to them, and he accuses them, none other, of being miraglim atem. You're being spies, and you've come to uncover the problems here in the land of Egypt. And he repeats within that chapter, within chapter 42, the word miraglim comes up 6 times. Yosef accuses them of being spies, and when the brothers go back to their father, they retell the story to Yaakov, their father, and again emphasize that they were accused of being miraglim. And what's interesting is, perhaps by calling the story in our parsha about the 10 spies who give a negative report about the land of Israel, by calling it that word, miraglim, which does not appear in this week's portion, perhaps it's actually a flashback to that story at the end of Bereshit, at the end of Genesis. Because at the end of Genesis, we met 10 brothers who came on a mission to buy food for their family. And the viceroy, who turns out to be their other missing brother that they don't know, that that's him, right, accuses them of being spies. And when they come back to their father and report that they're accused of being spies, he wants them very badly to go back and continue to try buying more food. They wait out a little bit more of the famine, and when the going gets tough, they agree to go back. But Yaakov, their father, gives them some advice. And the advice is very interesting. He tells them, K'chu mizimrat haaretz, take from the best of the land, and he gives some examples of spices and nuts, things to take with you, and that should appease that really mean ruler that accused you of being miraglim, of being spies. And the thought occurred to me that perhaps by calling the story in this week's Torah portion, the miraglim, we're actually echoing back to that earlier story and reminding ourselves that there was a time when there were 10 brothers who were accused of being spies. But what did they bring as their appeasement? They brought something so very, very different than the 10 spies of this week's portion. The 10 spies of our portion brought what the Torah calls dibat haaretz, the libel of the land, the lashon hara, the bad framing and telling of what goes on in the land. But interestingly enough, when we flash back to Sefer Bereshit, we met the 10 brothers whose father told them, K'chu mizimrat haaretz, take the best of the land. And the commentators on that phrase back in Bereshit explain, what is that phrase, zimrat haaretz? It means the shevach, the praiseworthy items of the land. Take the fruits of the land and sing the praises. The commentator, the Bechor Shor, says it so beautifully. He says, bring the fruits of the land, and when people see them, they'll say the following. They'll say, says the Bechor Shor, Kama tova Eretz Yisrael, sheyesh ba perot tovot ka'ele. And then the people who see those beautiful fruits, umizamrin umishabchin et haaretz, they'll sing the praise of the land. So it's interesting. You can take the same fruits of the land at the end of Sefer Bereshit, 10 brothers, and appease the ruler who accused you of being miraglim, because the fruits and the story that you tell bearing these fruits is a story of praise and of the greatness and the beauty and the splendor of the land. Alternatively, you can take those same fruits of the very same land where we have it. You can take the very same fruits of the very same land, right, Eretz Yisrael, present them to the people, and it can turn out to be dibat haaretz, the slander and the libel of the land. And I thought that it's so telling that the way we talk about the spies of this week's portion, we call them the miraglim. Maybe we're reminding ourselves of that first group of 10 brothers. And maybe we already give the antidote, the recipe for fixing, the healing to the sin of the spies. How do you heal dibat haaretz? How do you heal the slander of the land? It's with the same fruits. It's the same land, right? And the 2 spies who gave the other report this week saw the same fruits, but saw them in the praiseworthy version. And perhaps if we remind ourselves of the 10 brothers at the end of Sefer Bereshit and of Yaakov Avinu's advice, Jacob's advice, to take mizimrat haaretz, to take the fruits, but turn them into the praise of the land, right? Then we end up with appeasement and glory and splendor instead of a sin that costs the Jewish people 40 years of wandering. And I thought this was so true of Aviva. Aviva looked at the land of Israel and the opportunities there as mizimrat haaretz, as the opportunity of something praiseworthy, splendid, glorious. And she did not turn, even when the troubles came to her in the land, she did not turn it into dibat haaretz. I met Aviva first when the first year that you came to Israel, and I didn't really meet David until a much longer time into their stay. I met Aviva and 4 wonderful daughters who were separated from David for work purposes, but came because Aviva believed in Zimrat Haaretz. She believed in the praiseworthy parts. She wanted to raise her daughters in Israel. She wanted them to have a strong Jewish education. She wanted them to feel committed as Jewish women here in the land of Israel. And Aviva wanted to enjoy the best of the land. At Nishmat, that meant coming for high-level women's Torah learning, continuing what she had done. She was single. It meant participating in all opportunities of the praise of the land, and literally the zemer, the song of the land. It meant music, it meant theater. I remember when she tried explaining to us what laughter therapy was, we were a little bit too straight and didn't quite understand, and she had to do some examples and shared with us a little bit of that inner world of the zemer and the shevach, of the happiness and the excitement. And of course, it would be incomplete to talk about Aviva without the physical beauty, her own physical beauty, the way she dressed. Boy, she put me to shame time and time again. The way she set a table, the way her home was decorated. I learned a couple of tricks from her about serving. I still make a multicolored cherry tomato salad thanks to Aviva showing me the beauties of the fruits of the land. But I think from Aviva, we learn the antidote to the sin of the spies. We learn that you can take the same fruits, you can take the same land, you can take the same experience. 10 people can see the same thing in 2 different ways. It can be dibat haaretz for some, and zimrat haaretz, the praise and the praiseworthy things for others. And I hope that should be Aviva's legacy for her family and for all of us, to learn to look at the good of the land and to draw out the most. Yehi zichra baruch.
Thank you, Daphna. By focusing on the song of the land, you've brought me back to listening to Aviva, who had the voice of a songbird, singing with members of her family, and other memories of Aviva and song. And you've casted for us, you've cast the song, the music, which is so much part of the Goldblatt family, of course, with David's prodigious talents there. How can it be otherwise? The song is part, as you say, of a way of looking at the world. So we thank you so much for helping us cast things in those terms. I think a first yahrzeit is so hard to commemorate because we're asking ourselves, can this really be? Aviva passed away a whole year ago. It's so new, it is so raw, it is so filled with pain and anguish, and at the same time, we all have such wonderful memories. So here we are on this first yahrzeit, and as I listen to Daphna and I listen to reminiscences, of course I listen with a great lump in my throat. And at the same time, I try to say, we're all visitors on this earth. None of us is here to stay. And for the time that we're here, the question is how we use those years. And the way in which Aviva used those years taught me so very much. And on this first yahrzeit, it is that I'm thinking of. I'll do the next piece of learning on the chapter in Mishlei of Eshet Chayil. I chose this chapter because, well, we know Aviva was a woman of brilliance, of grace, of charm, of beauty, of talent, of kindness, of nobility, remarkable nobility. But that's not why I chose it. Within this chapter, in my opinion, family and religion are the two central posts, and that was the foundation of Aviva's life. Aviva spoke often of how proud she was of her daughters, how happy she was with her family. So the chapter Eshet Chayil is sung on Friday nights. The rabbis say that it's actually a metaphor. One of the suggestions of metaphor is that it is a metaphor for the Torah. The Torah is the Eshet Chayil. The paragraph, the chapter, is commonly translated as a woman of valor. Now, what I'm going to say, I heard from my husband about 40-something years ago. I can't really count, but I wish to give him credit before I start out for what I'm going to say. If one looks within Tanakh at the use of the word chayil, ish chayil, eshet chayil, asay chayil, doesn't mean a woman of valor. It means achievement. The people of Beit Lechem, when Boaz marries Ruth, give him a bracha, and they say to him, Aseh chayil b'Beit Lechem, which means be successful in Beit Lechem. We're told in the book of Dvarim that we're not to say, Kochi v'osem yadi asali et hachayil hazeh. Don't say that my abilities, my talents enabled me to have all of this great achievement. Instead, recognize that God gives you the ability to achieve. Valor comes within, but what God gives us is the ability to achieve. The chapter in Mishlei begins with the words, Divrei Lemuel Melech Masasher Yisrato Imo, Ma beri u'ma bar bitni u'ma bar medarai. It's the praise of a son who marvels at his mother. What does he marvel at? Well, if you look at the psukim in Eshet Chayil, you see a tremendous amount of achievement, including a tremendous business sense. Darshat Semer Ufishtim Vatzas Bechefetz Kapeha. She begins with a kind of what's it called? Closet industry, a home industry. She begins by weaving, by crocheting, but then we read afterwards, Haytaka Aniot Socher. She is already engaging in long-distance commerce. She is like merchant ships, bringing her bread from afar. We go on and we read, Zamamasadeh Vatikachehu. I wasn't thinking of a closet industry. Forgive me for my English. I meant the cottage industry. But the cottage industry very quickly grows to trade from afar, and then she must have been successful because we read Zamamasa Deva Tikachehu. She planned to acquire a field and she was successful. Mipri Kapea Natakarim, from the fruits of her success, she planted a vineyard. The chapter goes on to say that she stretched out her hands and continued her efforts. um, uh, and other psukim, Yadeha Shilcha Bakishor, Kapea Tamchu Falech. But we wouldn't be learning this perek in as an Ilui Neshama for Aviva if what we were talking about is simply a woman who has remarkable material success. I mean, there's really an extraordinary picture here of a woman of enterprise, a woman of creativity. But that's not the whole story in this chapter. There are two other fundamental elements here. One of them has to do with family. Vatakam בעוד לילה, ותיתן טרף לביתה. She awakened at night in order to prepare food for her family. Now, someone who's this successful need not do that herself. But the point is, you're dealing with someone who has talent and who has success, but who doesn't lose the place of family and the care for the family. Why do you get up early? The answer is because there's something that doesn't let you sleep. You're thinking of your family. You're thinking of your children. You're thinking, I want to give them this. I want to provide this for them. We hear, lo tira leveita mishelek, ki kol beita levush shanim. Her family is well dressed. She needn't fear the cold because they are all adequately dressed. We go on and we hear Sophia Halichot Beita. She oversees the ways of her family. That's one element that you have here. Actually, I wish to say you have another two elements, not another one element. The other is her concern for those people who need chesed. Her Torat Chesed Alashona, the teaching of Chesed is on her tongue. The teaching, but it's not just the teaching, it's the acting. It's when she wakens at night, she prepares food for her family, but also for her helpers. We hear as well, that hand that she stretches out with success. For what does she use her success? She uses her success to sustain others. She understands that she's here in this world as a shaliach. We're all in this world as shlichim. None of us know how long we're going to be here. We know that God has given us certain gifts. Each one of us is blessed as we are blessed. And the Eshet Chayil stretches out her hand to the needy, and as well as caring for her own family. The final foundation of this parak has to do with religion, and anyone who walked together with Aviva understood how central religion was for Aviva in her life. What is it that motivates a person who is successful to look at their success as a way of helping others, rather than to look at her success as perhaps God-given for her own benefit, to look at herself as a shaliach. We hear of what is it? The answer is Isha Yirat Hashem Hi Titanal. It's a question of how you look at life and how you look at your gifts, how you look at your success, and the Eshet Chayil, her son, contemplating her, says, listen, I can sum this all up. There's a remarkable woman, almost legendary, who was here, a woman of nobility, a woman of grace, a woman of beauty, a woman of remarkable achievement, a woman who sustains her family, a woman who sustains her community. Where does this all come from? Her son says, Isha Yirat Hashem Hi Titala. It comes from the sense of religion within the soul. I want to end the look at the perek with going back to words that I heard my husband speak many decades ago, and I think Aviva would have enjoyed these words very much. My husband says we often hear women spoken of in terms that have to do with limitation to the home. The glory of a woman is inward. In other words, is in the home. Not every woman manages to be the Eshet Chayil, the woman of achievement in the book of Mishlei. But it is here set up for us as a model. Those who would say that a woman should limit the expression of her talents have not looked carefully at this chapter. And the fact that this chapter is used as a metaphor for Torah means that this is a model that those who are capable of it should aspire to. I wish to end my words by reading a marvelous paragraph which I received yesterday from Racheli Shefir, who was Avrida's chavruta in one of her many years at Nishmat. I had the privilege of having a friendship with Aviva for 3 decades, from her first time at Nishmat, through the time in the United States, through the time in Switzerland, and eventually returning to Israel. Here is what Racheli wrote. Racheli was speaking about being a chavruta with Aviva in Gemara, and she said, in addition to Aviva's great wisdom, she said, I loved hearing about life in Switzerland, her family, and her pride in her daughters. There's one story that I want to share with you today. I'm reading this especially because many times we don't know what our family members speak about when they're not with us. So, Schnur Goldblatt daughters, I want you to know your mother spoke about you. And that Racheli is telling us what a pleasure it was to hear all of the stories about her family and her pride in her daughters. Now, here, on my last day at Nishmat, Racheli left during the middle of the school year. On my last day at Nishmat, Aviva insisted that it could not just be a regular day of learning. We had to do something to celebrate. In typical Aviva fashion, she decided to combine 2 of her great loves in my send-off, improv and Torah. We spent that Seder, the Chavruta time, reviewing all the sugyot we had learned until then, planning improv skits for the various concepts, from Eidim, Zomim, false witnesses, to the halachic consequences of lopping off the top of a barrel on Shabbat. We must have prepared 10 to 15 skits. And during the shiur, during the class, we acted them out, and we had our classmates guess the sugya after they caught their breath from laughter, of course. It was a morning of creativity, a morning of chazara, of review, of seeing months of Torah learning come together in laughter and in joy. Aviva gave me this chance to celebrate and to be proud of all we had accomplished together. I think these words of Racheli bring us back to what we heard from Daphna, the wonderful way of Zimrat Haaretz and Zimrat Aviva, the song of Aviva. Our next learning will come from Racheli Sprecher Frankel, and I would like to invite Racheli to come to the Bama.
I'm here. Shalom, Shalom Rabbanit. With permission of everybody here, it's weird on Zoom, but really with the, it's more than an honor. It's emotional for me to take part tonight. I had the privilege of learning with Aviva, mostly with Rachel Weiss also as a threesome. She was her chavruta, but also a little bit beyond. And when I was thinking what we can learn together as in the context, so I had in my mind, you know, Aviva as a general scholar and Aviva as a Torah scholar, and you know, and the brilliance and the positivity and the, you know, all that. But mostly I was drawn towards beauty and the artistic side and the affinity Aviva always had to anything creative and beautiful, and it was drama, and it was, you know, there was a whole side of the personality that came up no matter what you learned and what you spoke about. Even the way she, you know, the way she chose to dress, the way everything was always so aesthetic and beautiful in the most positive, lively way. So when I was thinking of those aspects of art, of beauty, of aesthetics, the image that came to my mind, the personality that came to my mind, is the one of the ultimate artist within Torah culture, which is Bezalel. Okay, Bezalel was chosen to do all the we say amanut ve'omanut. Okay, the art and also the artisan. I'm missing the English words, but also the whatever had to be done professionally around the materials that were brought to the Mishkan and creating everything that was glorious there. So here I will share a screen with you because I'm used to using Mekorot and we wanted to do some learning here. I hope this works, okay? Here we go. Wait. I prepared it, but it ran away, so it will take one more second. Sorry, taking another minute. You'd think after 3 months of Zooming nonstop, this wouldn't happen anymore. Here.
Racheli, if you wish, you can email your sources to me right now, and I'll screen share.
I'll figure it out in 1 second, okay?
Yes, we have the screen.
Yeah, it's not the right screen. Here it is. Okay, we got it finally. All right, I apologize for that. Here we go. So we spoke about Bezalel, and these are some of the psukim about Bezalel. וידבר השם אל משה לאמור, ראה קראתי בשם בצלאל בן אורי בן חור למטה יהודה, ואמלא אותו רוח אלוהים בחוכמה ובתבונה ובדעת ובכל מלאכה, לחשוב מחשבות, לעשות בזהב ובכסף ובנחושת, ובחרושת אבן למלות, ובחרושת עץ לעשות לכל מלאכה. ואני הנה נתתי איתו את אהליאב בן אחיסמך למטה דן, ובלב כל חכם לב נתתי חוכמה, ועשו את כל אשר ציוויתיך. So there's a lot of discussion around Bezalel and around what the gift Bezalel got was, but one thing we hear is, ואמלא אותו רוח אלוהים בחוכמה ובתבונה ובדעת ובכל מלאכה. This is not just an affinity to the beautiful, not just a talent for art, it's a divine gift. And it's a gift of wisdom of different kinds. It's חוכמה, it's תבונה, it's דעת, לחשוב מחשבות, okay? It's the ideas behind, the plan behind what's actually gonna grow out of these materials. And then there's Ahaliav that works with him, and there's a whole bunch of other people that are part of this artistic project. And it says, ובלב כל חכם לב נתתי חוכמה. So the Gemara in Brachot says, אמר רבי יוחנן, אין הקדוש ברוך הוא נותן חוכמה, אלא למי שיש בו חוכמה. שנאמר, יהב חוכמת לחכימין ומנדעה ליודעי בינה. So the Gemara says, you know, Hashem gives the gift of wisdom to people that already have wisdom. And he brings a pasuk from Daniel about wise men becoming wiser and etc. שמע רב תחליפה בר מערבה ואמר קמי דרבי אבאו, he heard this idea and he said, we learned it from a different pasuk. We learned it from Bezalel. Anan mehacha matninan lei. דכתיב, ובלב כל חכם לב נתתי חוכמה. So the people around Bezalel, that artistic bunch that was going to build the Mishkan, they are the Chachmei Lev that are gifted the divine gift of Chokhmah. Ubelev kol Chacham Lev natati Chokhmah. And the Torah Tmima says, and he quotes the Gemara, אין הקדוש ברוך הוא נותן חוכמה אלא למי שיש בו חוכמה. צריך עיון. איך נתן בו חוכמה הראשונה? What do you mean? So where did the first wisdom come from? So the original wisdom wasn't a divine gift? ונראה הכוונה למי שיש בו חוכמה, למי שיש בו הכישרונות המסוגלות לקניין חוכמה. So he says, so I think it's, you know, wisdom is altogether a divine gift, but you have to have the vessels to acquire it. You have to have the tools. You have to have the motivation. You have to have the mesirut, you know, the devotion. You have to have the brain, everything that's needed to actually acquire wisdom. ובזה ניחא ברכות דף מ' בואו ראה שלא כמידת הקדוש ברוך הוא מידת בשר ודם. מידת בשר ודם, כלי ריקה מחזיק, כלי מלא אינו מחזיק. Okay, so there's a metaphor in brachot. It says, look, when we talk about divine gifts, it doesn't work the way we're used to thinking. The way people understand is, if you have an empty vessel, you can fill it up. If you have a full vessel, what can you fill there? But HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't work like that. מידת הקדוש ברוך הוא אינו כן, אלא מלא מחזיק. ריקם אינו מחזיק. שנאמר, אם שמוע תשמע. Okay, so here's the metaphor that says, it's not, you know, sometimes when you learn this, it sounds like we're saying, אחרי עניים רודפת העניות, you know, money sticks to money, the poor stay poor. This is not true. It says, if you're full with the desire for wisdom, if you're full with the devotion for wisdom, if you're full of, you know, the quest, okay? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gifts you. If you're empty, so you stay empty, right? So that was all said about Bezalel. And we learn on that Bezalel, יודע היה בצלאל לצרף אותיות שנבראו בהן שמיים וארץ. This is a statement that's usually understood as a very mystical statement. ספר יצירה, קבלה, the way the world was created through letters, בצלאל knew those secrets. כתיב הכה, וימלא אותו רוח אלוהים בחוכמה, בתבונה ובדעת, and then other psukim that relate the same terms to creation itself. But again, the Torah Tmima wants to learn this also in the Pshat. He says, יודע היה בצלאל לצרף אותיות שנבראו בהם שמיים וארץ, נראה ביאור אגדה זו על דרך הפשט. בחוכמה ייבנה בית, okay, you need wisdom to build a home. בדעת חדרים ממלא כל הון יקר ונעים, again, you need חוכמה, you need dad, you need wisdom to create your home, to create your space, to create your family. וזהו ביאור כאן שנחה על בצלאל רוח השם. רוח חוכמה, בינה ודעת, הדרושים לבניין בית נהדר. זהו גם הכוונה שגם בניין העולם ובריאת שמיים וארץ נבראו על ידי הקדוש ברוך הוא במידות אלה. So here already, I don't have to leave it in the metaphor, I can already immediately translate it to our beloved Aviva, because it's not just an affinity to beautiful, an affinity to art. It's chokhmah, it's bina, it's dat, it's Ruach Hashem. And what is that Ruach Hashem used for? First of all, it's used for acquiring more chokhmah, bina, v'dat. But it's what's darush lebinyan bait nehedar. You built your home with it. You created a space for your family. You brought it with you to Bet Midrash. It's everywhere. You saw Aviva. You saw this walk with her. The beauty of the Chokhmah, Bina, Vadat, the Ruach Hashem that's like the gift to Betzalel. יודע היה בצלאל לצרף אותיות שנבראו בהם שמיים וארץ. Here there's a description of Rav Binyamin Levin that was escorted Rav Kook when he was stuck in Europe, Tafresh Samech Aleph. He says, we were taking a walk and suddenly Rav Kook started speaking and saying stuff and I found quickly a pencil and I wrote every word he said and this is what he said. הספרות, הציור והחיטוב. חיטוב is sculpture and drawing and different kinds of art. עומדים להוציא לפועל כל המושגים הרוחניים המוטבעים בעמקי הנפש האנושית. These different forms of art are there to bring out into reality, to realize the wonders and the depth of the human spirit. בכל זמן שחסר עוד אף שרטוט אחד הנגלה במעמקי הנפש החושבת והמרגשת שלא יצא אל הפועל, עוד יש חובה על מלאכת המחשבת להוציאו. He says, and if you're an artist, and if you're creative, and if the spirit is growing and burning within you, it's a religious duty to let it come out, to let it grow, to show it to the world, to realize it. Okay? And for me, this is Aviva, totally Aviva. And one more description, it was written by the Gon Bloch of Telz. He passed away in 1944. And he says, I'll read and translate as I go along. And it's read, translate, and translate to Aviva. But that goes without even spending an extra word. באמת מלמדים אותנו חז"ל, חז"ל teach us. כי דרך האדם הגדול, the great person, the greatest of human beings, הוא שיחיה בכל כוחותיו, ושיהיה ער ומרגיש את הכל. כי אל לו לבטל רגשותיו. He says, a great person is multifaceted, has many faces. He lives through all of his capabilities, through all of his senses, through all of his appreciations, for wisdom, for beauty, for human beings, for family, for love. ולכן כל מה שיגדל, the greater a person becomes, הרי כל רגשותיו ערים וחיים בו יותר. The more all of his sides of his personality grow, the capacity to create, to love, to live fully. וגם רגש היופי מפותח בו בכל תוקפו. And this great person, his appreciation for beauty also grows. Okay? מתפעל ומתרגש ובראותו מחזה טבע נהדר. He stands in front of a beautiful natural scene and he takes it fully into it. You don't see this person and you say, oh, such a great human being, such a great rabbi or so, and say, why are you busy with beauty? No, you're a full person, you're a great person, you appreciate beauty. And when he the same appreciation goes for music, goes for any type of beauty. Thank you. אלא בהרגישו הכל בכל תוקף נפשו הגדולה, יודע הוא להשתמש ברגש זה לתכלית הנשגבה להכרת הבורא. When he feels all this excitement from all this, beauty in the world, he knows how to channel it as part of his religious experience or her religious experience. ולא רק שאין זה מזיקהו ומורידהו ממעלתו, it doesn't make him smaller, אדרבה, it makes him higher and more, and in a religious sense, in a spiritual sense, להתבונן על ידו בכוח השם וגדולתו, ובהכירו בכל העניינים את כוח הבורא. When a person like Aviva sees beauty and it's part of her whole religious life, it's part of her whole spiritual life, when she lives out art and she it's just so wholesome. שברא בריאות נפלאות ונהדרות מאפס ומאין הוא בא מיד להתפעלות נישאה ורוממה, which we can also say when we think of the image of Aviva, מה רבו מעשיך השם.
Thank you, Racheli. Each speaker is bringing to us a different aspect of Aviva, the song, the beauty, the Yirat Shamayim, the wisdom. We're now going to hear from Dr. Raphael Guggenheim, who shared so many years as a friend of Aviva's and a friend of Aviva and David's, the family. Raphael.
You hear me?
Now we hear you.
Okay. What Harabanit, dear family, Goldblatt. Yes, when Chaim came to me and asked me to say some things about Aviva, and I said we are friends of Aviva from a time that at least the children or the young children don't know anymore, or they didn't know yet, let's say like this. And I want to say some things in order to reminiscence the time that we and my first wife knew her, because I knew her through my first wife, and we discussed actually because of that also about Aviva, and this is actually what we want to bring within this session today. I think Aviva for me is the picture of a person Hagalut legeula. She brought actually for me, and it was said already several times today, she brought for me the idea of Galut to Geula. And there was a very famous philosopher, artist, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, who said, Libi b'mizrach v'ani b'sof ma'arav. My heart is in the east and I am in the end of the west. We got to know Aviva in a time when we were young people, students, and I remember that we got to know her as in the time when we were in the Jewish Student Association in Zurich. The reason why we met her was actually through Shoshana. I didn't see whether Shoshana is here. She was the friend of Shulamit, and that's how Aviva came then in our house. And in that time, when we were friends, we were really very active in a lot of things, especially about Judaism and about Eretz Israel. I remember that Aviva, from the very beginning, as you all said, from the learning, we heard it before, was already in Zurich very muchsheret. She was a person who was not only in Torah, but in all aspects in life, in political life, in science, in interest. She was an outstanding personality with outstanding interests, outstanding knowledge, and also outstanding efforts that she would do in order to bring the ideas that she stands for to the people that she knew. William, I think I saw that you are also here, and I remember that Aviva, in a time when it was very difficult, stood together with us at the Bahnhofstrasse, which is in Zurich, and we made a thing for Israel against actually a lot of Palestinian efforts in that time. And we said Augen auf. Some people perhaps reminded it. We tried to bring political knowledge about Israel and showing what's going on in the world. How is the world have a prescription? How does the world see Israel and how it should be? What is the real truth? We were bringing, I think, oranges, all kind of things, but also political information at that place. And Aviva was one of the leaders in that time that helped us to bring activity in Zurich for Eretz Israel, because from the very beginning, Israel and the Torah, or Torah and Israel, was both very near to her heart. So I was always very impressed about this straightforwardness, also the way of how she discussed with people, and that she was really not only talking about helping Israel in Switzerland, but that she was actively doing things, not only by theory, sitting in a warm place where nobody is perhaps making any problems, but standing on the street and doing so-called street work for Israel, because that was her very deep, she was very convinced that this is very important to do that. She, after that, was also in the Gesellschaft Schweiz-Israel, which is an association for Swiss people to make efforts in order to see Israel as and all its good things. She was there in the Vorstand. She worked there a lot. I wasn't in that Vorstand, but she was doing a lot of, we say today, political work. We could say chesed, but it was her own thing that she wanted to show to the people what is in her thing, what is important in her life. Besides that, she was also doing a lot of things with philosophy, with me and Jose Khan. We had a very good time in the Jewish Student Society in that time. And very personally, she was a very good friend. And that's actually the sad thing of the story, that she was a good friend and is no more here with us, even if she is still in our heart and forever will be a good friend for us. Aviva was the one who came to the Mendelheim when we lived in Mendelheim, and we had my Shulamit was pregnant with Adiel, and we knew perhaps she will give birth. And on this Shabbat, we didn't know how to do it because we are very responsible for the davening and for everything in this old age home. And Aviva said, I'm coming this Shabbos up, and if there is a problem, I will come and will help out. And that was really her. She was coming, didn't ask questions. And exactly on that Shabbat, Adiel was born, and Aviva was really the first one who was knowing it. We were in the hospital, but she did the help for us. So she was very friend in that time with us. And we will never forget this engagement she had in that really with our family. Unfortunately, fortunately, she met before that, she met David, and they built a beautiful house in Zurich. Some houses, I still remember the first flat you had in this beautiful place of Bellaria Straße, where you still have the small flat, but you had the big flat, and we had a very good times together with you there. And after that, you built a home in Bellaria Straße, and Aviva got very connected to Nishmat. And in that time, she also unfortunately became sick. And I learned once a nice Dvar Torah, and that is actually something that Aviva fulfilled, like a lot of things, that the first person who became sick, according to the Midrash, was in a kind of sickness was Yaakov. And Yaakov became sick. Before that, people eventually passed away immediately. They had no moments of thinking, what can we do better in our life? How can we discuss it with our family? And Yaakov, in Yaakov it's written, he became sick, and then he started to say brachot, also musar, to all his family. And I think Aviva, when Aviva became sick, she made a decision, which I highly appreciate, that really is miga galut legeula. Not only that my libi is b'mizrach, I will be in the mizrach. And that was a big decision for her. She had everything in Switzerland, actually. She lived a good life here. But she realized that if she wants to show something, if she wants to fulfill something in her life, she has to do that in Eretz Israel. And that was the way that you actually took the chance of it to build the house that you now have. And I don't see you now, family Goldblatt, but I saw you before shortly on the picture, that you live now in Israel in this house. And that was actually a reason that I was highly appreciate from some friends, but especially also from your family and especially from Aviva, to do this in her life, this stage from a good place in Israel, in Switzerland, very much related to Israel, but then really to go to Israel. And with all the difficulties that you had, and that was also difficult for the family in a lot of things, that you take this and build a beautiful house and an important house in Eretz Israel. And to think, actually what I think for Aviva, I want to finish with a small Mishnah, because it was not, I don't have to learn, but she was for me a person that I really not only highly appreciate for her intellect and not only for her interests, but actually for her heart. I was really felt very near to Aviva. And a little bit she was that, what Hillel says in the Mishnah Yud Bet in Avot, that she was mitalmidav, heve mitalmidav shel Aaron. She was from the Talmidim von Aaron. Ohev Shalom, she loved the peace. Verodef Shalom, she was also running after the peace. Ohevet Abriot, she loved the people. She really appreciates a lot of friends that spoke today. Umekorvan la Torah, and she brought them to the values of Torah. And today we heard it that she has these values of Torah, and we hope, and that's my wish for this Yutzeit, to the family, that the family can go on this way that Aviva showed to them, and will be able to continue this way of Limud Torah together with the Rabbanit that shows it so nicely in Ishmat, and all the other friends who are learning Torah. And we should meet on a lot of simchot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael. Thank you.
Many of us have noted that here at the Azkara for Aviva are those who loved her, her family, and those who loved her in Yerushalayim, in Eretz Israel, in Switzerland, and from Switzerland to the Far East. I think Yonat is in Bangkok, in Thailand, if I'm not mistaken. And we have, of course, the Goldblatt family in the United States, Aviva's in-laws, with whom so much quality time was spent, and so many of us from so many walks of life and so many places. I'm going to end with what is for me a remarkable memory, a visual memory, a picture that I carry with me from Shavuot a year ago. Shavuot a year ago, I was at Ishmat, and at that time, that was 2.5 weeks before Aviva continued her journey into the next world. And I thought to myself in the middle of the day that Aviva has to hear Megillat Ruth. So I asked Shira Tzuriel, who is our veteran Baalat Koreh, who reads in the Beit Midrash, who reads Megillat Ruth every year. I said to Shira, listen, I know you're going to read later in the day, but how about the two of us? This must have been in the early afternoon, possibly around 3 o'clock. How about the two of us walking to Shaarei Tzedek Hospital? It was a very, very hot day. It was a very, very it was a challenging walk. Shira immediately said, sure. And the two of us walked to the hospital. We didn't know whether Aviva would be awake or sleeping. We didn't know if the family would still be there. It turned out that David and the girls had been with Aviva in the morning and had walked back to Katamon. And we got to the hospital, and we went into Aviva's room, and Aviva wasn't there. So I went to the nurses and I said, do you know where Aviva might be? And they said, well, why don't you look here? Why don't you look there? There's a nice family room or a kind of a lounge that had books in it. Maybe she's there. So we walked around. We almost gave up because we didn't find Aviva. And then we passed this room. This is, I guess, what was referred to as the lounge. It was a room with Sfarim in it. And there was one person in it. It was Aviva who was sitting there. And this is 2.5 weeks before her passing that I'm talking about. Aviva looked gorgeous. She was dressed for the Chag. She was alone in the room. So she did this for herself and she did this for the Chag. And it's a picture which for me represents what Aviva is. She was dressed in a beautiful dress and she just looked so beautiful. And she was sitting and reading in the room. We came into the room and we said, Chag Sameach, Aviva, we're here. We wanted to bring you a reading of Megillat Ruth, and she was enchanted. And this brings us back to Zimrat Haaretz, and Megillat Ruth is, I think, Zimrat HaEmunah, a song of faith. And Shira, Aviva, and I each we brought along Tanachim with us. Aviva had, of course, her Sidur, or her Tanakh with her. So we sat there listening as Shira read. So it was a reading from another world. It was deeply melodic. And the remarkable thing is, you looked and you saw the triumph of the soul over the body. You saw Aviva's neshama. You saw the pleasure that she was getting in the story of Ruth and Naomi and Boaz. You saw her pleasure at hearing the music of Jewish faith. And we finished reading, we spent a few minutes chatting, and then we had to run back to Nishmat in order for Shira to be reading again. It was a very, very tough walk. I wasn't sure I was going to make it back. And I'm so grateful to Shira for coming with me and having that remarkable experience of seeing the triumph of Aviva's neshama. For whom was she dressed? Someone else would have been wearing pajamas. She wasn't wearing pajamas. She wasn't wearing a robe. She was dressed. She was wearing jewelry, not expecting anyone to see her, but because that's what she wanted to do on Chag HaShavuot. And my ending to this Azkara is that I often think to myself, what would be if we met Ruth and Naomi and we were to tell them, there's a book in Tanakh that's written about you two women. My sense is that they would be astonished and they would say, why? Who are we? We're ordinary people. We're not kings. We're not queens. We're not prophets. Why would anyone write a book about me? And I think that I can see the laughter on Nomi's face and the astonishment of Ruth. Why would we be chosen, or why would we be chosen, excuse me, for a book? And I think that the Tanakh would answer, because you lived well, because you lived a good life in the largest sense of goodness. When I started, I said, none of us knows how long we will be here as we walk along the path of this world. Do we bring goodness to the world? What do we bring to the world? And I think Aviva brought to the world a model, as I said, a model of love of family, of love of people, of chesed, and without question, the song of Emunah, Zimrat Emunah. We were all privileged to know Aviva, and we wish David much nachat from the extraordinary family that he and Aviva built, and that David is going on parenting. We look forward to hearing much good news from your home. And to all of us, may we derive inspiration from Aviva's life and bring it into our own lives. Yehi Zichra Baruch. Good night. Everyone is welcome to unmute themselves at this point, and those who wish to speak are able now to do so. If you will unmute yourselves. If there is anyone who wishes to part with greetings, I don't know, Sipi, if you can unmute us, or Ayelet, if you can unmute us, please do so. Let's see if it works. ציפי, איילת, אתן יכולות להפסיק להשתיק אותנו?
They don't mute.
Okay.
Everybody's unmute.
Everyone can now unmute themselves if they wish, and I bid everyone a Laila Tov, and thank you for participating in this evening.
Thank you so much for organizing, speaking about our mother. We really appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
לילה טוב.
טוב. טוב.
בשורות טובות.
Thank you so much for organizing, and thank you very much.
Okay. Blessings to all. Thank you very much to all of the speakers, to Dr. Raphael Guggenheim. You added so very much to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi Tenkin. Yes, and we should learn only on good simchot. Amen.
Amen. And I end by thanking the members of Nishmat, Julie and Tzipi and Ayelet and Yehuda for assisting us with the organizing of this evening and the technical aspects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shkoyach. Git mit limit. Johannes da? David and Lydia, I don't know whether you hear me. They still hear me? David?
We hear you.
Okay. Wish you really a strong day and good limut. And sorry I'm not in Israel for this day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope to see you
Very
again.
nice memories.
I actually had another memory that I didn't tell. That was a memory for David. Because we are really related to your family a lot. I don't know whether you remember on the day before the Chatuna that we went to St. Moritz to visit you. And it was also a very...
Repeat it, we missed you. We missed.
You remember that when you were in Celerina before the Chatuna, the girls will not know that. But on the day of the Chatuna, when before you had the Chatuna, you were in Celerina on the...
We're losing some of it. Repeat.
You were in the way before, you were in Celerina before
the
Chatuna, and we went to visit you. I don't know whether you remember that. By car.
I remember that.
And actually it was, I don't know what it was related to Aviva, to who it was related, but we saw, you remember that we had a car accident there, but that we came over with no harm. And yeah, we always, there's a lot of places.
Now that you mention it, I remember it a little.
Now you remember it. We had the thing, perhaps you remember that, because it was snowing, it was icy. There's a lot of places
losing your
remember you. And William was also here. I still remember the place of your Chatuna when it was in the hotel. I'm still sitting with William sometimes in the hotel, in the Atlantis. There's a lot of places that of remembrance. Very nice to remember. So there is nice things. So we're happy.
We miss you, Rafael.
I'm sorry.
Aviva and I didn't make it back to the Atlantis. We wanted to have tea there after you told me about it.
I told you that. But the hole is not existing.
We have pictures.
The hole is not existing. But William and me, we sit there and drink, and every time I'm going there, I really remember the good times. We have to remember the good times. It's important. The good times are there also here. I looked a little bit in the photo books of the old times. It's really, we had a lot of very good times. And they should continue. Baruch Hashem, you have beautiful children. You have both beautiful children. So I'm happy that you're here. And I wish you a lot of Hatzlacha. And come here again.
You and Mickey were, do you remember the three-legged dance at our chasana? Do you remember doing it?
I made this leg dance. Do you remember that? With the 3 legs. With the
three-legged, you and Mickey. Yeah.
With Mickey, yeah. I remember that. In the times I was 40.
Not on video.
Yeah, we had a good time. It was a nice chasana. Very nice. I still remember that to go to St. Gallen. I think I was in St. Gallen only very few times in my life. When I'm coming to St. Gallen, I still remember where this ugly house where was the thing, where was the civil marriage. it was very nice. So I think
You were at the civil marriage?
I was at the civil marriage, Mr. Goldblatt. I still remember this ugly house. It was in this big house near the barn.
I remember Christina and Stefan.
Yes, I remember that I was there.
I remember you there.
And you have to remember only that Aviva was there, not me. I don't remember the details. I remember that I never know St. Gallen because I rarely go into St. Gallen. For Zurich, St. Gallen is Ausland. Very nice.
It was Daphne who just mentioned.
Yeah, that was it.
She mentioned that Rav Kook was stuck in Europe. It was in St. Gallen that he was stuck in.
It was in St. Gallen, yes, of course. Sternbuch, family Sternbuch.
Yeah, yeah.
And after that in Basel, Rav Kohn, the father of Gabi and Arthur Kohn, grandfather. Yes.
Wow.
I know he was in St. Gallen in the First World War. Before he went to London. So I wish you a good learning and a good remembrance, and there should be good remembrance and they should stand. And I see your beautiful girls. I didn't see them for a long time and they're very small on my screen. But we love you. Come again.
You were here in February just before. You were here in February just before Corona, right? Just before it hit. I think I was in New York. You came for Chaim's
You were
surprise
in
party.
New York. I missed you when you were here because I was here for Chaim before the Corona. And now it is more difficult to come to Israel, unless you have 14 days place in your house for me. No. But I hope you come to Switzerland again.
We can put you in the miklat.
Thank you very much.
We hope. We're all.
We can't wait to come.
You.
Guys, the flat is here.
Chaim checks every day, right? When Swiss will.
You were the first thing to be in this flat. It was a Goldblatt. Before we lived in this flat, you were here.
That's true.
That's true. So the flat is still here. So come here again. As long as we're in Zurich, you should come and see it. Okay. So you really, I have to tell you, you had a wonderful mom.
Thank you for.
I knew her a lot, and I
Bye,
appreciate
everyone.
her. And we love you very much, and we think at you a lot. Chaim, bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye to you too.
Bye.
Thank you.
I talk to you later. Bye-bye. Ich fliege das so schnell noch. See you, girl. I call you on another thing to David. I call you later, okay? When on another channel. Bye-bye. Call to.
Bye.
Are you still there?